Yeah, because if an actor is in their head, we can. I mean, it's like
You
it's
can
like
tell.
a sign. I'm in my head. It's very easy to see that, and sometimes it's just sometimes it's just somebody's time. Sometimes they get the right role. It connects with them in a way that roles before haven't truly connected to that degree, and there it is. That combination opens a new doorway in some way, and again, that happens all the time as well.
Great. Okay, today I'm joined by casting director Gary Zuckerbrod. Gary, how you doing? Welcome.
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm all right for a nice rainy day over here in the UK, as always.
It's sunny and gorgeous and cool here today.
How's I ask everybody that's how's the past few months been for you, I guess, personally, creatively, professionally? What's the kind of panorama been for you like?
It's been, for some reason my chair is caught. Just straighten that out. It's been very interesting because I wear a couple of different hats. I've been very involved. I'm a board member at Local 399, which is our union, and I'm also the television shop steward for casting directors. So I've been involved in a lot of the discussions for protocols for casting directors to go back to work. And in addition, since I'm a board member at 399, which is the Teamsters in Los Angeles, I've been involved in discussions about how different disciplines are going to go back to work. Mm-hmm. Casting directors are the easiest because we can do everything virtually on Zoom, and we don't, or one of the other platforms. We don't have to be in a room with actors to get what we need. I happen to love being in a room with actors. I love working with actors, but to keep people safe on both sides, working with an actor on Zoom is just fine. I've cast people from New Zealand, Australia, South America, all over the place, England many times, just working with them over the internet. So that's been professionally one of the things that I've been doing. And the other is just, trying to keep my head on and work with others to keep their heads on. So I am also a life coach.
Okay.
So it's a strange sort of combination of
Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe.
No, it's actually not strange at all. Actually, when I was learning to become a life coach, it was so close to what I do with actors on a daily basis and what I love doing with actors.
What are the main parallels that you have kind of found then in terms of
the main parallels are really learning how to connect. For me, I love teaching audition classes. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that's, to me, that is the most important aspect of being an actor, just a little background. I grew up in a suburb of Manhattan, and I was very lucky. I had parents that were real doers. We were always doing something. Every weekend we were out doing something. My dad, my mom was from the Bronx, my dad was from Brooklyn. So if anybody actually knows what that means, my mom was a Yankees fan and my dad was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan. And the Brooklyn Dodgers moved to San Francisco and the New York Mets came into play. And so the great divide was equaled when the New York Mets started playing in 1964. And my parents used to take us to Mets games all the time, but they'd also, if there was a cultural thing going on in New York, we were there. I grew up practically in the Metropolitan Museum of Art and going to Broadway theater. I saw my first Broadway show when I was 9 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I never stopped. My older brother is 2 years older than I am. And we took the Long Island Railroad into the city in Times Square in the 1970s. when it was filled with junkies and hookers. And we'd go to Saturday matinees or Wednesday matinees in the summer. And you could buy what was called two tickets for $4. And you sat in the top seats, but it was 2 tickets for $4. And we saw everything, absolutely everything on Broadway from 1968 on. And so I just had a love of theater. Sorry about the street noise.
That's all right. Something that if it was happening now, you would be missing out on all that stuff to do, right? Like we're in the complete antithesis of.
Well, if it
that.
was happening now, that would mean that I could travel and I'd be in New York for a little bit, and
Sure.
You know, and probably take a little jaunt to London and see what's going on there. So.
And so I guess a lot of those similarities with the sort of life coaching and the casting side is, I suppose, being able to understand what people are going to be going through without them saying anything. Because for an actor to come into the room, a lot of times, especially early on, those nerves can be there. Maybe they're in their head. Do you find when people came into the room, a big part of what you had to do was almost trying to gauge like where they were at and how to redirect them and make them feel at peace with doing the work?
Well, you know, it's an interesting thing, because what I'm hired by a production to cast roles. And so my job is not to, it's difficult. My job is not to be an acting coach. My job is to see, well, it is. Actually, it is. Many times I am an acting coach. But my job is to see what an actor brings to a part that matches the vision of what the creatives on my movie or show want. Now, the other odd thing about a casting director is I can't build the perfect actor. I can only take people who fit the part or actually may not be the ideal fit for the part and see that they have a quality that makes that role work in a way that maybe nobody saw it before, but really makes it work. And I always give this as the prime example of what I'm talking about. A couple of years ago, I was hired to do a series that actually it was short-lived, but it's actually pretty good. It was done, a series by David Kelly called Monday Mornings, and it was about a hospital, I think it was in Seattle. And the two main leads were two doctors, male. One was, and it was based on a novel, and it was based on a novel by Sanjay Gupta, the famous neurosurgeon.
Yeah.
Yep. So the novel was based, and in the novel, it's two doctors who run this hospital. Well, one is the ER doc, the main ER doc, and one is the administrative doctor of the hospital. And one was written as white, and one was written as a Latin ex-football player. We got Alfred Molina very quickly for the white guy, and we had to cast an Latin ex-football player who could do this role. And it's David Kelly writing, so it's very difficult to do. And we went through, and we needed a name because that was going to satisfy the network. So we went through the names, and you know, there weren't very many of them, and there were really 5 people that we were looking at, and one person, David Kelly, said, "I don't think he is this role," so that eliminated one. That left us down to 4. One person came in and met with David Kelly and ultimately said, "I'm not ready to do TV right now." That left us down to 3. One became unavailable. That left us down to 2. And the other person nobody was excited about, and that left us down to 0. And so I had to then bring in the actors that would come in and read, and that wasn't working either. And I said, you know, I can't I can't build an actor. I've got to figure out what to do here. So I called up a friend of mine who was very good friends with Ving Rhames.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to hang out with him. And I said, I know you don't represent him. Do you think Ving would be interested? And she said, you know what? We just had this discussion. Call his agent. So before I called his agent, I went into David Kelly and I said, David, I can't build an actor. And you're not going to be happy with any of the people I bring into reading the room. If I could get Ving Rhames to do this role, what do you think? And he went, if you can get Ving Rhames to do this role, he's hired. 2 days later, Ving Rhames met with David Kelly. 3 days later, they started negotiating his deal. That's what a casting director does. We build a cast with the possibilities that are available to us. I can't go on the set and paint the cast green because that's what they want that day.
Sure.
So every time an actor walks into my room, into my office, and I'm reading them for a role, I'm thinking, is this going to work? Is this going to connect? Is that actor going to emotionally connect to this character? Do they have something that makes this role come off the page and become a person? And sometimes it's just a gut feeling. And that happens all the time too. Sometimes you just get a gut feeling that somebody's right for a role. I'm going to give you another quick story. We were casting The Last Ship, my partner, Kamala Thomas and I, and we had to cast a role of a woman from North Africa who was an ex-soldier, incredibly smart, incredibly beautiful, and could be very believable doing some action work.
Right.
Kick-ass, sort of
Martial arts or action. Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Sure.
All right. So we're talking about the pool all of a sudden shrinks down like this. So we were doing some pre-reading, and I pre-read a whole bunch of people, and I found like 4 people that I knew. Okay, yep, they're all good. They're all good. I hadn't yet found great.
Right.
And
that was a guttural thing. That was just a sense you had.
Yeah, I hadn't found great.
Right.
And so an actress walked into my office, and she read for me, very little on her resume. And I found great. I not only found great, I was like, I mean, my associate who was running the camera and I just we looked at each other when this actress walked out of the room and went, holy shit. I mean, this was unbelievable. So I brought my partner, Kamala, in, and we all, with the actress there, and we all talked for a while. And so we sent over 5 possibilities to the producers because they wanted to read this role in person. We sent over 5 possibilities to the producers, and they chose 4, not the person that we had said.
Wow.
They wanted to see 4, and we called them up and said, "What about this other one?" They said, "She was good. We didn't really see it." We went, "Okay, all right." So we had to go down to where the producer's office were, in 2 days, and bring the actresses. So we put the 4 actresses on the casting session sheet, and we set up the other actress who they didn't choose. And we didn't put her name on the casting session sheet. And the 4 other actresses read, and they walked out, and the producer said, "All right, we could cast this. This is really good." And we said, guys, there was one other actress that we felt so strongly about. We just couldn't let it sleep. So she's waiting outside. Would you give her a read? And they said, "Oh, absolutely, if she's sitting outside." And they did. She walked out of the room, and this is the reaction of the producers.
Wow.
They said, "You were so right. I don't know how we missed that." That was Jodie Turner-Smith. And we made her series regular.
In a moment, everything is so different, just flips for everybody. What do you think that was? Do you think that obviously you could see it in the room and they saw it in the room. Was it something in the tape that they weren't paying attention? Maybe. I mean, that's such a
You
weird.
know, you never know what it is, and I don't want to question because it's, I don't want to say, you idiots, you didn't see this.
You want to work, obviously.
Right. Because you have to be respectful of everybody else's opinion. You can't, you can fight and fight and fight, and we do. We fight tooth and nail. I mean, if actors knew how much we fight on their behalf, because if we didn't, we'd never get anything done. And you can fight tooth and nail, but ultimately, my job is to fulfill the vision of the either, if I'm doing a movie, it's the vision of the director. In television, it's the vision of the executive producers. And that's what my job is as a casting director.
And
Now,
also, I guess you're piecing together a puzzle too. So you might have an amazing actor for one role, but in the bigger tapestry, it just
absolutely.
might not click. And there's a zillion permutations to that.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's just, blind luck. On the same series, we had a role that we couldn't cast. It was a guy who was like a secretary of agriculture who because of a war gets bumped up to president of the United States because he's the 8th person in line.
Oh,
And
okay.
everybody else is killed. And, we were going crazy we brought in wonderful actors. And I said to the guys, and Mark Moses had just done an amazing arc on, oh my God, I can't believe it, the Mandy Patinkin in, oh God.
The only show that comes to mind is Homeland, and I don't know if that's the one.
Homeland. Mark Moses had just done
Right.
an amazing arc in Homeland. And I said, hey, is anybody watching Homeland? And they said, yeah. I said, hey, Mark Moses is available. My executive producer said, book him. He said, we don't need to read anybody else. If Mark Moses wants to do this role, we should be so lucky. Sometimes it happens like that.
Sure.
And sometimes you are reading 500 people for a part. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but it happens.
Maybe not so much now with all the Zoom stuff. I guess you're going to be able to see more people than before because you don't have to book out sessions. So maybe not 500, but
yeah, I mean, we did a pilot a couple of years ago that was filming in New Zealand. We were searching all over the world for people. When we did the sequels to Kissing Booth, we had to find the Latin guy. We looked throughout Mexico, throughout Latin America, in Spain, and the guy came in Los Angeles and he was the guy.
And that's it. It's just that feeling of that's the guy that you can't quite put your finger on. But you spoke about great a few minutes ago. What's your take on the nature versus nurture kind of element of that? Like, you know what I mean? It's such an ethereal kind of thing and so subjective, but is that something that can be cultivated over time by an actor, or do some actors, do you feel, just have this intrinsic thing?
All the time. I mean, do you know how many times Brad Pitt came into my office and read for me? And there was something there. You just knew it. And it just hadn't, his moment hadn't happened yet. His connection to himself hadn't happened yet. Happens all the time.
That last part of what you said I found fascinating about connection to himself, which probably overlaps with your life coach stuff a little bit, because in my view, especially in my journey in the last few years, the more I think about it, the more I look at life experience and just what you do as a human being what really enriches anything you do creatively, which is a no-brainer, but really it is that thing of, it sounds corny, but knowing thyself and having the self-awareness enough to then be able to come into a room and be able to give your little flavor or ingredients of whatever you are to that role. Because if you're trying to play something logically or with what you think they want, you're never going to give your authentic take on it. And there's an intersection there.
Yeah, because if an actor is in their head, it's like they're wearing a sign. I'm in my head. It's very easy to see that. And sometimes it's just it's sometimes it's just somebody's time. Sometimes they
Sure.
just they get the right role. It connects with them in a way that, roles before haven't truly connected to that degree. And there it is. That combination opens a new doorway in somebody. And, again, that happens all the time as well.
Yeah, I
Um,
love that. Have you watched Succession, the show on HBO? Yeah, right.
well,
I I was listening to Kieran Culkin talk. I don't know if it was a SAG-AFTRA thing, one of these shows that they do, and he literally said that he knew and felt that that role was right for him. That he wasn't actually asked to read for that role initially. He was asked to read for the role of Greg, and he got that and was like, "I'm not this guy." Like he called his agent and just said, I'm not going to waste my time, yours or theirs, because I just know I'm not this guy. Like, I don't want to read it." But he kept reading the script because he just loved the writing. And then he got to page whatever, 25 or something. And he got to the first few lines of the Roman character. And he just thought, well, this is interesting. Like, I don't know if they're casting this yet, but let me find out. And he just self-taped a few scenes himself, sent it off speculative. And the resonance that he had with that role got him that job. But if that wouldn't have been in the script, I think he is in that stage of his life where he was just like, this Greg one isn't for me. Like, just doesn't.
yeah.
And I think for an actor that's a much more empowering way of looking at it than I'll take whatever I can get. Just give me whatever's coming. I'll do whatever, because that doesn't lead to good work.
And that happens all the time. I mean, and I'll give you another example. We were casting the first Kissing Booth, and it fell into place very quickly, except we could not find the male lead. Could not find, and look, it was a tough role to cast. We had to cast a high school jock who was incredibly handsome and just had this ease about him and could act and compete with Joey King, who she's a wonderful actress, and you can just feel it from her. Not only is she a wonderful actress, but she's a lovely person, and she is so giving. And that's a high bar to cast against, even as young as she was at the time. And we were looking all over the place. I mean, all over the place. We had read like every actor who was right for it in LA. In New York, we had people put on tape. We had people self-taping across the United States. We had kids self-taping in England. And we were about to hire a guy who lived in Texas. He was good. He was solid. He was great looking. He fit the jock part. He fit everything. But there was something that we were all like, yes, he can do it. Mm. And I got a call from a manager, and he said, listen, I signed this kid. He was in the US. He lives in Brisbane, Australia. He's, I'll be honest, Gary, he's got nothing on his resume. He was a glorified extra in a Pirates of the Caribbean movie that was shooting down there. And I said, send me his stuff. And he said, well, he self-taped for the role. I said, great. I'm watching this going, this is not possible. This isn't real. I don't know how this happens, but I was like, this is it. This is the guy. I called everybody into the office and I went, can everybody watch this? And we all went, oh my God. I called up the director. I said, where are you? He said, I'm driving. I said, do you have your laptop with you? He said, yes. I said, get to the nearest Starbucks now. I've got to show you something. And he laughed. He got my sense of humor. He's a great guy.
And he kind of knew, do you think? Did he kind of know where you were leading him to with that?
Yeah. I said, we found him. And he called me back a couple of minutes later. He said, is this for real? I said, we'll find out. We've got a Skype audition with him tomorrow at 10 o'clock in my office. And done. He was it.
And it is that thing, isn't it? It's just the stars all align, time, place, person. The thing about that story that's so amazing for anyone that might listen, though, is the fact that this is a dude who just self-taped and had no real other credits on his resume. And there was just something there.
To be honest, he comes from a very artistic family. His
Okay.
sister was a prima ballerina in a big company in Australia. His parents were involved in the arts. I mean, he was raised around that element.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like it just came out of nowhere. He had been studying acting,
Sure.
but he came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I guess it's not that linear thing that people look at and go, you need to get 5 co-stars and you got to do some guest stars and the kind of progression. He sort of bypassed that, for lack of a better term, because he was just that right fit, I guess, on the puzzle piece.
Right.
I guess with the co-star and guest star, because I have this come up quite a lot, and I have quite a few actors that have done a lot of the co-stars or sort of the 1 or 2 day guest star roles. And their question is usually around like, what advice do you have about trying to navigate the transition from those stages? Of course, sometimes in this example, it could just be there's a bigger role and you're right for it. But
yeah, I mean, there's everybody loves formulas.
sure.
And unfortunately, if you've chosen to be an actor, there's not a real formula for it. I mean, you have to have a talent of some sort. There has to be that innate talent. And you have to know your craft. It is a craft. It is not something that you wake up one day and say, I'm going to go out and I'm going to become a great actor. You become a great actor because you study and you learn and you build that set of tools that you understand how to make work for you. Meryl Streep studied, all these actors studied, and yes, they had a gift. I mean, there's no doubt about it, but they studied and they knew their craft. They understood how to access that talent and how to use that talent to create a role. I say this all the time. Also, that craft, if you are an artist on any level, you don't just pick up a paintbrush and start painting like Van Gogh. I mean, you just don't. You evolve into that. If you look at an artist's early work, a painter's early work to their later work, it's an evolutionary process. It's very much the same, with a musician. Listen to the music of any great musician in any discipline of music. There's an evolution to what their sound is. A friend of mine is a concert clarinetist. She was a concert clarinetist for 20 some odd years. She practiced every single day, and she still periodically went back to a mentor to take lessons. When I first got into casting in New York, my boss used to take me to this sort of actors thing where great actors, Harvey Keitel, and I once saw Harvey Keitel and I think it was Robert De Niro do a reading of a play so that they could keep their skills moving, keep facile, keep going. And so there's no definition of what makes you bounce from one thing to the next. Sometimes it's just luck. You've been going in for co-star roles, and you're submitted for a guest star role, and the casting director looks at your resume and says, well, they have the look, they've studied it, they've gone through they've gone to to NYU drama, they were working at, Circle in the Square, and I'm going to give them a read. They've been doing a whole bunch of co-star roles, and and they connect to the part. And that's what happens. Everybody wants to find a formula for it. Everybody wants to think, well, if I do 15 co-stars, then I'm eligible for the guest star roles.
Or they're concerned on the flip side that they go, oh, I've done 15 co-stars. Now I'm only going to be seen as the co-star guy. And
right.
It's an over-focus maybe on the business. I think it's important to look at the business and how it works and understand that,
you have
obviously.
to look at business. You are the CEO of your business. You have to be smart about your business.
Mm-hmm.
Your responsibility to yourself as an actor is, do I have the tools to walk into that casting office and get that role? Are my skills up to date? Are my skills up to speed? You know, I haven't gone to class in 2 years, and I'm going to start walking into offices because I've been doing, you know, basically co-star one-line roles. Yep, you could get lucky, but probably you're not that facile anymore. You know, it's not an art where you can be complacent. It is an art that requires constant work and constant tuning.
Well, it's like your painter's analogy, right? I mean, your Van Goghs weren't just doing one big painting that gets in the Rembrandt overnight. They're painting every day, and you probably haven't seen a zillion of those. And it's just working the muscle,
right,
in whatever guise you can. I mean, obviously, classes is a huge way which we should all be doing. But beyond that, now there's so many other options as well. I guess with Zoom and just like you said, with the example of Keitel and De Niro just doing a read of a play, or you know,
right,
self-tape classes you can do with a group of actor friends and cohorts, whatever.
If you have Zoom, get 5 friends together, pick a play that you never thought you could possibly do, you know, or that you've always wanted to do because it's a role that you've always wanted to play, and do a reading of it. Have fun with it, you know, but keep it's very funny. I'm actually sitting at my dining room table, and I'm looking. I have this sketch pad which is falling apart because it's from my college days when I was an art major.
Okay.
And that was probably before anybody who's watching this was born. And I decided in this time when I had some free time, I'm going to start sketching again. I want to start painting again. And I was looking at some of the sketches I did, you know, many years ago, and I'm like, and I start sketching, and my hand-to-eye coordination is just shot.
Right.
It's gone. I have to rebuild it. And it's never going to be the same as it was when I was 19 or 20 or 25 years old when I used to take classes. Sure. It's going to have a new perspective and a new view, because I've watched the evolution of art since that time. My feelings about things are different. My feeling right now is different. You know, it may be a little darker than it was back then. It may be a little bit more, wow, life is, you know, you realize the preciousness of life when something like this happens. Mm-hmm. And your parents start getting older. I mean, all those things that an actor can bring into themselves to create that character, all those pieces, you know, that's what you have to, and you've got to keep that skill up. I mean, I'm looking at some sketches that I did and I went, that was pretty good. I now suck. I've really got to get my hand-eye coordination back together. It doesn't
but not having judgment over that either, you know, just kind of, it is what it is. And
yeah, it's what it is, you know.
Yeah,
I may not get it back to where it was, and that's fine too. I'll figure out another way to do it. But yeah, you know, you constantly have to keep up that craft.
And that is symbiotically hand in hand with your life experiences, and kind of what you're saying there about, you know, where you're at now in life artistically is going to be expressed in a very different way to where you'll be in 5 years or where you were a decade ago. And
Absolutely.
Trying to have a uniform view of like this, I don't know, weird animatronic, I'm always going to act the same way no matter what happens in my life, is that very false pretense approach to, I guess, trying to serve something outside of yourself that isn't really true to what you can offer in the first place.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as I said, starting in this industry in New York, at the time that I did, I was very lucky. It was a time when, all these wonderful actors, like Sam Jackson, who used to come in and read for 3-line parts. All these wonderful actors were, in New York, and it was a sort of heyday for a new generation of actors back in the early 80s. But one of the things that I also I just loved, because I was such a fan of movies. When I was a kid, there was something on ABC called the 4:30 movie, and what they basically do is they would take great movies and they condense them to an hour and 20 minutes, and
right,
had to fit them into a time slot. And it was dead air time. It was after the soap operas finished and before the evening news.
right.
It was dead air time when nobody was watching TV. So, and if it was a great movie, like if it was a big epic movie like Dr. Zhivago or The Agony and the Ecstasy or something like that, they would cut it up into a week. And
Okay.
so I got exposed to all these great movies. Plus my parents were constantly taking us to movies. And as I said, I went to see my first Broadway show when I was, 8 or 9 years old. And so I had a lot of exposure to that. And, one of the great things was when I got a couple of jobs early on as a casting director where I had to cast like older actors. Like I'm talking actors in their 70s to 80s.
Wow.
And, those people, they wanted jobs, even though they were names, and they wanted jobs, and they came in and auditioned. And we were doing the Pope of Greenwich Village in New York, and we had to cast this role of an Irish mother, an Irish mother in her 70s or in her 70s. Geraldine Page came in to audition, and I had to read opposite her. Now, I am not an actor, and I'm not that good a reader. I like to give. I'm all about giving. Sure. And I walked into the room. I'd set up the casting section, and I walked into the room, and she was sitting there talking to the producers and the director. And it hits me, I have to read opposite Geraldine Page, truly one of the greatest actresses of all time. And I think my blood pressure went through the roof. And she was so gracious, and she was so amazing. And I literally felt this energy come off of her and move towards me. I can't describe it in any other way. I mean, maybe that's sort of crazy, but I literally felt it. And she finished reading, she closed the script, and she went, "Thank you very much. I really like this role." And she walked out, and I turned around, and everybody was crying.
Wow. So
that energy had not only gone through me, it had gone to everybody else. I mean, these are grown men who have done this for years, and my boss, Bonnie, crying. And you just, every once in a while you hit that.
That's the power of what, the medium is and being an artist is, if you can actually be so grounded that you can affect people in that way.
Absolutely.
And to then just walk out so gracefully and probably go on with her day just like anything else. And whether she got the job or not, or, that wasn't even the point of it. It's the way that you just navigate the world and circumvent it. And
yes, she got the job, and yes, she got an Oscar nomination for it.
Sure. But I think my point is, irrespective, if she wouldn't have, she would have just gone on about her day, but she still would have affected you, and you would have still had this
Absolutely.
story. And that's my point. I guess it goes beyond the job and the awards and all the fancy things that we seem to aim for, which yes are great and yes they're awesome, but if you're not affecting people on an innate level, that's all surface level stuff that doesn't last. Like, no one's going to be talking about those things as a story, umpteen years later, whereas you're still reminiscing about that moment because it still affects you now.
It was probably one of the most impactful moments in my career as a casting director.
And do you feel that when she did that, you sort of had a shift where you felt more grounded and calm from that initial nervousness you had to do the read, or did that not go away, the nerves?
Again, I'm not an actor. I mean, I took some acting classes in college. It's my job to make that person, or any reader's job, to make that person the focus of attention and give them the best opportunity you possibly can. And so my concentration when I'm reading, especially now, I mean, it's changed so much. I'm not thinking about what I'm doing.
Sure.
And I screw up all the time. And I'm a lousy actor. But what I'm doing is, I know that I'm giving them enough. I'm giving them enough acting to put them help them on the right road. And it's about them. It's all about them. I'm not thinking very much. I don't think about what I'm doing.
Sure. Cool. I'm just seeing that I have Aaron here in the waiting room. So let me bring him in and let me have him ask you a question or two, take a break from me. And then maybe if we got time, I'll circle back with a few things at the end and ask a few more questions, because I'm enjoying all the stories, and I appreciate you sharing them, because there's some real gems in all of them.
Yeah. And they're stories, and
they're great. I love good anecdote.
But, sure.
Awesome. Aaron, how you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you? How are you guys doing? You all right?
Good to meet you, man. You're on with Gary Zuckerbrod, so I'll let you guys connect, say hi, and I'll shut up and let you have 5 minutes to just ask a few questions and have a bit of a chat.
Amazing, thanks.
Aaron, where are you?
Currently, I'm in my kitchen in Manchester, in England.
Mm-hmm.
And it's extremely wet and extremely rainy, as it always is in England.
Mm-hmm. That's why all the Brits love to come to Los Angeles, because it's sunny.
Exactly, like sunshine, got the weather, you got the beaches. It's nice, man. It's a good change.
But the water's freezing. Don't let anybody fool you.
Really? It can't be that cold.
No. It's freezing. I grew up in New York. The water was like bathwater. The reason is the currents here come down from the Arctic.
So one day, come to England, go to Liverpool, dip your toe in the water there. That's cold. That's very cold. That's
right.
Miserable. You talk about with like an ice cube on the end of it, it'll be shocking.
That's why the Beatles left. That makes all the sense in the world now. I get it.
You have to go around the world to find the warmth.
Exactly.
So I've got a question, if that's okay to ask, and it's in regards to visas. So initially, my plan was to go to LA for the weather and also the opportunities this year, but due to filming schedules, I wasn't able to make it this year. And my plan then changed to go in 2021, but everything with COVID and so forth, I'm not too sure what's going to happen. But I've heard that due to the COVID pandemic, that it's harder now to get a visa to come and do pilot season in the States. So I was wondering if that was true and how things are meant to be working in that respect.
So again, it's not my field of expertise by any means, but yes, it is. I have no idea if it's more difficult to get visas, but it is definitely more difficult to get here because you have to go into quarantine. I mean, right now the U.S. Is so strange politically. And besides, it's not going to be a pilot season like it was ever before.
Yeah.
Unless somebody miraculously invents a cure that can be tested and disseminated by early January, it's going to be extremely different. Also, from my union side, because as I said, I'm an officer at the Teamsters, the Hollywood Teamsters here, whether networks are going to be doing as many pilots or whether they will be more selective, because it's so much more difficult to film. I mean, every set has to have a COVID inspector on it. You're limited to the amount of people you can have on the set. You can only have X amount of people. Everything has changed. And everything is going to be done virtually. I don't think there's any reason in the world to try to go through all the hoops you'd have to go through, all the isolation time you'd have to go through to get to the United States, in mid to late January, to go running around to casting offices, because you won't be running around to casting offices. You'll be sitting in a room, filming yourself. So what I would concentrate on is getting your skills together, setting up a place that gives you the best advantages for self-taping, making sure that you've got a background behind you that's decent. You can get one on Amazon, probably you can get one for $15 here. What is that, like
25 pounds, 20 pounds, something like that.
20 pounds. Make sure that you've got a camera that can record you well. And you know what? Get some actor friends and sort of form a group and say, let's do a group that's going to go around and we'll read opposite each other, because one of the things that you're really going to need is a good reader opposite you. It really makes a difference if you have somebody good reading opposite you. It just does.
I'm quite fortunate. I've got some good lights. I've got a good camera. I've got a decent setup. I've got a background in filming myself. So I thought, okay, if I'm gonna send a self tape, I'm gonna make sure it's good quality. You know what I mean? I don't want to send something half-hearted. I want to make sure it's crisp. So I've got that kind of setup. In terms of readers, I've got people who can read in for me as well. But like you said, it's about finding the right kind of person to pitch the right kind of performance to help and aid, I guess. So that'd be helpful. But I mean, running around LA with warmth does sound slightly better than self-taping in my bedroom, I'll be honest.
Of course it does, but you're running to, I don't know where you're going to be running to. I know.
Room, isolating.
Right. I can't imagine that casting offices are going to have, I'm not going to have live auditions. I can't imagine that there's going to be some miraculous vaccine by then.
True. Yeah.
Gary, do you think you're going to do any live auditions for things like callbacks and final stages, or do you think that'll even get to be just all remote or Zoom-based stuff from what your conversations have been?
I think for the most part, no. No. I really don't. I really can't see it happening. First of all, it's rare that you bring actors into the studio and network anymore as it is. For the last 2-3 years, the networks, what they've done is they've set up elaborate taping studios, and sometimes the executives will come in during the taping session and watch the actors, but it's a film medium, and it's so much better to watch that actor on film. You really get a sense of what they are on film. rather than watching in a room and then they film something and they go, oh, that's not what we saw in the room. Well, no, it's a different medium, you know? So, yeah, I mean, it's a better way to do it. It takes the nerves out of it for the actors. It takes the anxiety out of it for the people who are trying to get those actors hired. It shows them in the medium they'll be performing in. I really think the sort of live audition thing, unless it's a very specific producer or director or a very specific set of circumstances, I think that's
Done.
That's pretty much over. And I think this has sort of put the nail in the coffin for it. Now,
Sure.
That isn't to say that if you're doing a feature and you have a director that, yes, that director will want to see something live. I think that's going to continue on for a while. But in TV, I mean, before the pandemic, we did a pilot that it was filming in New York. We were doing the primary casting in Los Angeles. We had casting directors on, because it was for NBC, so NBC had a casting director on in Toronto, Vancouver, London, New York. They hired casting directors to do like a week in Atlanta, and I want to say New Orleans. I got a casting director friend of mine in Florida to put some people on tape because a Florida agent sent me some people that looked interesting. You know, the producers saw people live, and then we edited tapes, but studio and network didn't.
Well, that kind of answers my question. Also, probably save some money as well and less hoops to jump through, which would be helpful.
Yeah, especially now,
Yeah.
especially this year. Next year, I just don't see it being. And nobody's going to be that open.
Yeah, I understand. I can imagine the sun and the sand and the beaches. I can just do that in my head. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, you can come out for the sun and the beaches, but they're still going to say, yeah, can you go into a room and film this for us?
True. I can bring some of them things inside. A glass of seawater. Might help. Give me some, like, you know, real life feeling of warmth rather than the literal wet dreariness of Manchester.
Need a few UV lights or something over here to mimic the
You know what I mean?
the rays. Gary, before
Where are you?
I'm not too far from Aaron. I'm in a city called Leeds. It's like an hour away, so it's north of London, and it's one of those, like, you know, living in London, much like living in LA or New York in a major market, has its pros, but it also has its cons from a financial perspective. And so all of this now opens the game up to actors everywhere, because you can invest more in the technical stuff, in your craft, in your tribe, and you can tape for anyone wherever they are. And I guess just be ready and willing to go to wherever you got to go to do the work, or meet somebody if that time ever comes back again to meet in person. So in some ways it's kind of empowering.
Yeah. I mean, we had to do a worldwide search on this pilot that we did, as I said, for ABC a couple of years ago. So the lead, we had read everybody for the lead actress, lead role. And the actress that we ended up hiring was, her family was from India. Her family was living in Australia now. And she was in India because she's a Bollywood actress. She was doing a movie. She self-taped. I forgot if she was in India when she self-taped and then went home to Australia to do a retake. It was something like that. But we hired her for the lead in a pilot off of a self-tape that she had done from either India or from Australia, and it didn't matter. And then another actor, the executive producer said, where is he doing his self-tape from? And I said, he's not sure. It's the weekend. He's going to do it over the weekend. He's not sure if he's going to stay on his farm in Spain or go to his family in Italy.
Fair enough.
And he looked at me and he said, well, how do you not know that? I said, well, he wasn't sure. And honestly, what difference does it make? And he looked at me and he said, none.
Yeah.
I said, I said, if he's in Italy or Spain, we're still going to get the same tape.
Yeah.
Very true. Well, yeah, thank you for having me on. And
sorry to dash your sunshine dreams.
I mean, like, I'm just gonna like print out a fake picture of the sun, and then I'm just gonna get some like children's play sand and put it in a room somewhere and feel like I'm somewhere different. So that might help as well.
It's like that thing Jamie Foxx does in Collateral, where he's driving the cab, but he's got the picture of like the beach in the visor. So just do that and watch out for that Tom Cruise character, and you'll be fine.
That's what I'm gonna do. That's what I'm gonna do. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me on. Thank you so much, Ash, for inviting me. And
my pleasure, man.
Been lovely to meet you, Gary.
Thanks for coming on, Aaron.
So, guys, see you later.
Take it easy. Bye-bye. Yeah, it's a different time, I think, with all that stuff with the visas. It's sort of whether you need to have one and come to the States permanently for non-American actors. And I know a lot of actor friends that did that going back 10 years, and a lot of them, they were there, but they were just struggling to keep their head above water. They weren't even getting in rooms, and this is when rooms were open. Whereas now it's a different case.
Right. It's interesting. Years ago, I mean, the pilot, during the pilot frenzy, somebody once asked me, they said, a New York friend of mine who has nothing to do with the business said, I read this article about pilot season, and he said, well, what is that like? He said, are the streets like, I mean, are there actors lined up outside your door? And I said, no, it's appointments. I mean, you set up appointments. It's just that you have to read a lot more actors to find the right person for the part, because there's so much more at stake. A company is spending millions of dollars to film a pilot, and they want to make sure that the cast that's in front of that camera, because that's really what sells a pilot, the script and the cast, are going to come together and be viable.
But that was a different world and a different time, where the May upfronts and the advertising money for TV and network was the main kind of approach. And now with the streamers, I don't even know if we know what the model is necessarily yet, but it's not that strict sort of January to April window per se. It's kind of flattened.
No. Even for the networks, they're doing stuff off season as well all the time. Sure. Right, because if something, let's say something is made for CBS and they love it, but they realize it's not going to fit into what's on CBS network right now. I mean, if you look at the evolution of CBS network, you can see over the last couple of years, it's either sort of those crime dramas or it's half hours. I mean, that's kind of what they have. They don't really have like a This Is Us. They don't really have, they've tried that family drama and it keeps not working. So that's great. They've sort of figured out what the audience is for CBS network, just like a cable channel or a net channel, which is becoming more audience specific. It's not as broad based, and yet some of the off network channels are like they're out there doing a little bit more broad base to sort of see what they can get, like Netflix. Netflix is very broad base, but they know where to find those audiences within certain things. They have a young audience, and they have more heavy dramatic, and then they have an adult comedy. I mean, that's what the future of it all is.
Yeah, because what I see on Netflix is going to be different to what you see, to what Aaron sees, to what someone else sees too, because it's going to start learning what you like. And much like when you go on Amazon and shop for whatever you shop for, they're going to start showing you certain things of the catalog on Netflix that they think you're going to be into based on the way the AI is set up. And that's the kind of evolution. And I guess somewhere in the mix, the whole ad game will come into play. And
it already does.
Well, that's another conversation for people more in tune to that than I.
Yeah, but you know, that has, you know, again, all of it's great, but it has nothing to do with an actor getting a role.
Sure.
And getting a role for an actor is being as prepared as you possibly can be, and then walking into that room. And I when I teach classes, I always talk about two words: flexibility and rigidity. If you are flexible, you walk into that room open-minded, which means if you prepared something and you walk into the room, you do what you prepared, and the casting director or the director, if they're there, says, that was good, I really love your quality, but can we change this? And they give you a direction that's 180 degrees different than what you came in and prepared for. Flexibility is being able to take that moment and say, okay, I'm an actor. I'm going to redo what I have to do internally. I'm going to switch the gears to do what their vision is of me doing that part. And that is so important. It's a skill that I have watched actors flip a role like that, and it's breathtaking. It's amazing.
And it's the same skill you're pretty much going to be needing to use on set with a director, because they're going to want to collaborate and give you different notes, and you need that malleability. So with that in mind, Gary,
because you know, I've worked with a lot of directors who've said to me, you know, I like that actor a lot, but they couldn't take the direction on set
because they just see in the room that they couldn't quite take the note the way they needed to.
Yeah, and again, I talk about this all the time: flexibility and rigidity, and it's something that it doesn't just pertain to actors. So I was once going on I was once going on a meeting for a job, and it was a wonderful script. It was about a family in the Carolinas, and you know, it was a big family drama kind of thing, multi-generational, and it was basically the sort of parent age 40s family, the younger generation, you know, girl in college, younger brother, high school football player, and then there was the grandmother. And so, you know, you read the script, and you come up with ideas that you want to maybe discuss with the producers. And it's clear that this is a white family. And so, you know, for the grandmother, I'm thinking, oh, you know, this is a really good role. You'll get a name actress of note. And so I come up with my whole list, and it's unfortunately, and this is always sort of weird. It changed it from an office meeting to having lunch, which meant, oh my God, I've got to talk for an hour now. So, and as you can tell, I don't have a hard time bringing up subjects that are esoterically connected to something. So we get to the role of the grandmother, and I said, you know, it's such a beautifully written part, and I love this arc that she has. In the pilot, she has a wonderful arc. And they said, oh, thank you so much. And I said, no, this person will be there. And they look at me and go, oh, didn't anybody tell you we're changing that role? And it's no longer going to be the grandmother of the family. It's going to be basically the woman who raised the kids, and she's going to be African American. And I said, wow, that is great. And they said, yeah. And I said, oh, so it's going to be like this actress, and this actress. And they said, oh, yeah. Now, two things could have happened. I could have sat there stymied and said, ooh, shit, I'm in trouble. Well, I made up a list of white actresses, or I could just, you know, take a beat
shift
and say, who's going to come to mind that would be right for this, even if I know they're not available? And just say it would be an actress such as.
Yeah.
And it's a, you know, and that rule applies to any job interview. And that's what an audition is. When somebody gives you information in that job interview that causes you to have to switch gears, you can either be flexible or you can be rigid. It's a choice.
It's a very simple choice in terms of logic.
You know, I'm losing your sound.
Really?
Yeah.
How about now?
There you go.
If I lean in, I'll just stay like this the whole time. It's a very simple choice, I think, logically and conceptually, but yet it's quite complex as well for people in many ways, because I think that takes a lot of, again, inner work, self-awareness, and development of who you are as a person to let the ego go in those moments, to be able to just kind of have that full flexibility.
Exactly. But flexibility is, you know, as I always say, you know, I love teaching on camera classes because it's the same thing. You know, you've got it so prepared in your head and you're going to stand facing this way and you've worked it all out and you've got all your motions and you've got all your energy facing this way. And the camera is here. So if you face this way, this is what the camera would get. You have to orient yourself to that room, which is why assessing a room, assessing your physical space is actually a great exercise when you walk into an audition room, because it gives you that beat to put yourself out of what's coming out of my mouth and just be in that space. And as an actor, don't you use your space?
Hopefully, amongst everything else.
Right.
Let me ask you a question then, Gary. When it comes to self-taping, because that's obviously that's it now, like that's what we're doing. We don't necessarily have that input from the casting person. You know, maybe later on we might have in some stages, but you're kind of on your lonesome working with your reader. What advice would you have for someone who doesn't necessarily then have that person outside of their own head to give them a new slant or a new bit of a note to then give a new version of the scene?
That's a good question. Hopefully, usually when my office does self-tapings, we put together a self-tape packet. And what we will do is give some indication of what we are looking for in terms of the role. Mm-hmm. The thing you can also do is ask your agent, see what's on the breakdown. That usually has some indication of what the casting director office is looking for in the role, which is what the producers have told the casting office, until they come in and do things like a week after they've changed their minds that role is no longer white. They tell the casting office and go, "Oh yeah, we forgot to tell you guys."
Feels good. It's nice.
Trust me, it happens all the time.
I can imagine.
But so one of the things you can do, which I think any actor should do it on any audition, and I think I've spoken about this, look up what those people have done before. Look up what those producers have done before. So, you know, if you're going in for a show that's written by Aaron Sorkin, chances are that dialogue is going to be written with this, because that's what Aaron Sorkin does so brilliantly. Now, there are times where it won't be, and you'll look at the page and go, gee, that wasn't written that way. But, you know, you have to make a decision. You have to make a choice. It's an interview. It's a job interview. You have to take risks, and you have to make choices.
So really, it's taking the information that you're given, however much or little that is, and I guess being a bit of a detective for yourself and going from what's on the page, on the sides, going on the producers, the directors, seeing their past work, and try to get an idea of tone.
Or, you know what? Go on to Deadline and see if there's an announcement about it, because it'll have a blurb about what that pilot is. And they're taking that from the blurb that the producers gave the network to give out to Deadline. Yeah. So you're getting an idea of what the producers are looking for. You know, it's the same thing. It's the same thing when my partner and I go into interview on a pilot. We went into interview on the pilot that we did last year, and you know, we looked up who the producers were, and we looked up what they had done before. And after reading the script, it all made sense. And we kind of had we knew what we had to walk in with that room and do.
That's an interesting point. Obviously, the side that you guys that have, much like anyone else in the industry, where you're going and you're pitching and you're going for projects too. And it'd be interesting to get, I guess, a take on what you're drawn to now creatively and the kind of projects you're drawn to, you know, for yourself and for the company. Do you feel that's changed much over the years, or do you feel like you're still kind of going for the same sort of thematic things?
No, I don't think. No, you know, unfortunately, we get a little pigeonholed. So you know, we're not known for comedy as much as we're known for drama, which is why it was great having the Kissing Booth, because now, really, you know, we had one of the biggest, you know, viewing audiences in the world. For one of the comedies that we did. And it's funny because a producer said that to me recently. He said, you know, this is a comedy. Do you think you can cast it? And I said, yeah, there's this little comedy that's running right now. They went, oh, yeah, you can do that. I said, here's the thing. You cast good actors.
Sure.
You know, they may not have the skill of comedy, so you don't bring those people in, but
casting's casting ultimately on a innate level. But for you as Gary, do you feel like you're personally drawn to anything more than another, or are you actually quite open to whatever the experience is going to be?
Am I personally drawn? I love good writing, so I'm always drawn to that. I love a good challenge, something that will, you know, it's funny because I was never big on casting kids, and I've sort of begun to love it. I love there's a sort of honesty about it. And between the Kissing Booth and we did we've had to cast a lot of kids recently, even for things that are very dramatic. So we did a movie of the week for a Lifetime, actually, that was Elizabeth Smart telling her story. And we had to cast her at, you know, 11 years old. And the scenes that we were reading were the scenes of her, you know, right after she had been raped. And so, you know, these actresses were these 11, 12, 13, well, we wouldn't go lower than, I think the lowest we could go legally was they had to be 13 or 14. I don't remember exactly what the cutoff was.
But still, you know, having to read all these actresses, you know, who are reading these scenes of the day after they've been raped, it was unbelievable to watch the commitment and the skill level in these young actresses it was mind-boggling. But also watching them go through this emotional arc and having to sort of be there for them, you know, in a way. It was a very powerful experience that taught me a tremendous amount. So, do you think that has a lot to do with that? I don't want to say greater openness to the authenticity, but obviously as a younger aged person, you are less, I guess, programmed to behave and operate in certain ways. Do you feel like they were just more open to the experience? And because that's very heavy subject matter as well.
You know, it was interesting because oftentimes the ones that I was interested in posting, so that everybody could look at them, I would go out and speak to, if they came with a parent, I would go out and speak to their parents and say, you know, I just want to make sure with their kid, or I'd have the parents actually come in and I'd say, I just want to make sure that, you know, everybody is understanding the scope of this and what this will entail. And, you know, I would say 9 times out of 10, the parents would say, yes, we've had these discussions, but you should really let her express what she's feeling.
Okay.
And it was, I mean, God, the maturity level of these kids, I was like, oh God, when I was 13, all I could think about was,
Yeah.
when am I going to drive?
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's a different generation now. I think there's a different level of
Exposure.
Yeah, exposure. I guess that is it. Worldliness and exposure, and with that inherently will come a different degree of maturity. I don't want to say if it's better or worse. That's not even about that, maybe, but a different level.
It is what it is.
Exactly. Which I think is probably the underlying theme of a lot of this chat we've had today. It kind of ultimately boils down to it is what it is. You focus on your artistry, but life is going to go where life will go, and you can't try and stranglehold it. Otherwise, well, you can, I suppose, but it's not going to be a fun ride.
Right. It's not going to, I mean, what's going to work in your best interest? What's going to, I mean, again, as an artist who has to, create life out of a role that somebody else wrote, what do you do for your best advantage? How much do you bring into that role of what's going on in your life? If it applies, yes. Again, if you're going up for a kooky comedic role in this day and age, if the script isn't, has no mention of what's gone on in the last 10, 12 months, then, you've got to create that role from a perspective of 15 months ago.
Sure. Yeah.
So, we don't live in vacuums.
What? Well, we do now at the moment, Gary. I don't know about that. Now we're in a little bit of a weird,
Yes, we live in vacuums, unfortunately, but the world keeps going.
That's the thing. That's the most intriguing thing. I hark back to last year. I had to look after my dad who wasn't well, and you kind of get a different perspective of life when you go through those moments, as I think, unfortunately, a lot of people end up having to go through. But what you realize, we all do. But what I think you realize is when shit hits the fan and gets real, shall we say, people are there, but the world still spins. And whilst you might be going through your collective mourning and grief and your process individually, and your small inner circle might be, everybody else is still living their life. They're buying their Starbucks, they're going to work, they're doing whatever they're doing. And I'm just talking about the West. Like, forget about what's happened. Like, in other parts of the world, there is no Starbucks. So the perspective that comes with all of this. Huh?
There's really a part of the world where there's no Starbucks?
There must be. I feel like there's a Netflix documentary in that somewhere then, if they haven't made one. Find where they don't have a Starbucks. But it is that. It's that, yeah, the world keeps going no matter what. Prince died, world kept going. Michael Jackson dies, the world keeps going. Like, the biggest artists and people come and go, and unless the meteor comes and takes us out, this is going to keep going for a while, well past our time here.
Of course. Art, some art has a timelessness, and some art is timely.
I like that.
I mean, it's why you can still watch it. Somebody recently asked me, their kid wants to be an actor, and they said, what should they do? And I said, okay, what they should do is figure out why they want to be an actor. And they said, we've gone through all that. They said, can you suggest a bunch of movies to watch? And I said, yeah, I can give you a list of my favorite movies. And for each one, I could give you a reason why they should watch it. But it's better to have them give me a reason why they liked it or didn't like it.
And also, I guess your list is specific to you. and your tastes and why you
Right.
like it. Not that they're
And
bad movies.
And then, you know, I'll trade a list with them.
Sure.
I'll give them 10 of my favorite movies and have them give me 10 of their favorite movies.
Sure. Yeah, it's having an opinion. Having an opinion on things and then being able to express it.
It's having an opinion, and as an artist, having a point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's that fine line that an actor skirts. They must come in with their point of view, their perspective, how it's organically connecting to them, and then be open-minded to be able to see that character in a different light based on the direction that they're being given.
I think that's sort of a perfect way to almost encapsulate everything we've been talking about and almost round this up. I think with that little final point there. Gary, it's been awesome just hearing your stories, and I'm sure there's zillions more. You know, yeah. I mean, I've not even pulled about. Yeah, I'm sure you are. There, you know, I've held back on like asking about. I'm like, what about Pulp Fiction? What about working with Quentin and all that stuff? But
it was great. It was a great, fun experience. Really, it was
what we'd expect probably, and then not at the same time.
Well, first of all, he had done one movie. He had done Reservoir Dogs,
Yep.
and it was kind of dark, and you know, but you could tell that he loved actors, and I got that the second I met with him. You know, he loves actors, and he knows what to do with them, and he's, you know, again, I haven't spoken to Quentin in 20 some odd years, but he was just generous and giving and fun to be around.
And that's what makes a long-lasting career, you know. I mean, talent, obviously, but it's also being someone that people want to work with. That's just a good human being.
And he's a visionary. He's got a vision.
Again, goes back to that point, knowing what your point of view is and coming in and expressing it. Gary, is there anything, I guess, just to round this off, any final thoughts, closing messages, any sort of stuff you want to plug or where people can connect with you? Just a final moment to you to.
Yeah, I really don't have a method of being connected to, because, you know, I get a little overwhelmed. I mean, I'm not saying that sort of like on an ego trip. It's not, you know, my job is to cast things and to go and find jobs for my company. It's, you know, I do love answering people's questions, but I can't keep up with it. But yeah, I mean, you just have to, you know, stay safe in these times and keep practicing your craft. I mean, that's the most important thing you can possibly do, is just, even in these times, figure out a way to keep practicing your craft, because it's not something that you can let lie down for a while and then come back to. If you're going to really pursue it as an actor, you got to keep those gears greased.
Love that. Gary, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on and doing this. Love chatting with you. I'm going to leave you to enjoy the rest of your day. And maybe one day when it's, you know, travel is safe, Aaron will be out there and I'll be out there and we can maybe grab a socially distanced coffee or something. Who knows?
I would love that.
Take care, Gary. All the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.